tonight as the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council demands what they call a total withdrawal and annihilation of the controversial comprehensive sexuality education by government. We'll learn more about the $30 million funding made available to Ghana and other African countries to implement the CSE in school curriculum.
There should be total withdrawal, annihilation, destruction, expunge of that idea. It should be out of the vocabulary of Ghana education system. We do not want it.
We bring you a detailed timeline of how the global CSE agenda crept into Ghana's education policy considerations as Occupy Ghana demands full disclosure on the issue. Also on Top Story tonight, what we're hearing about the process to appoint a substantive IGP. We have the very latest as the president, we are learning, has submitted a name to the Council of State as part of the consideration process.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, brought to you by Gassem Cement, the nation builder, and Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready shortly. We'll be bringing you the latest twists in this controversy surrounding the comprehensive sexuality education as the Pentecostal and Charismatic Council today called an emergency press conference to put further pressure on government with demands for government to do what they say is a total withdrawal and annihilation of the CSE from all documents that government in fact had received funding for. That is coming up very shortly. But now, though, we are learning that the president has in the last few hours began the process that will eventually lead to the appointment of a substantive Inspector General of Police. My colleague Raymond Aqua has also been digging into his sources on this. Raymond, what we're hearing is that apparently, and of course, as the Constitution demands, the Council of State has been brought in. What do we know about the Council of State involvement?
We understand that tomorrow they'll be holding a meeting. The meeting is purposefully planned to make sure that the Council of State approves of the president's nominee. And this is the current acting IGP, Mr. James Opon-Buonu, who the president has actually submitted to the Council of State for them to approve finally, so that he becomes the substantive IGP.
Okay. This is information, of course, that we're yet to get official confirmation for, but our sources tell us that it's very much likely that the current IGP will get the nod as a substantive Inspector General of Police. Well, our sources also tell us that his name has been confirmed in there, has been submitted as part of the consultation process.
Yes,
as prescribed in the Constitution with the Council of State, which is the final leg of this before the name is finally made official. So that is very likely. Of course, barring any hitches.
That happens at the last minute and any objection which may come from the Council of State.
That is what our sources say you can expect. So the expectation is that the acting IGP will become a substantive IGP. But there's a question about his age and retirement.
Yes, he's due to retire soon. He was born in 1958, so he'll be 61 pretty soon and will have to leave office along the line. We understand that that particular appointment will come in an extension if he gets to retire anytime soon. So, assuming it happens this week, next week or so, in a couple of weeks coming, he might be retiring. He might actually be turning 61, which is the age that ordinarily would require his extension in that particular office. So that might be how best he will be dealt with in this role.
Okay, so again, the sources say most likely his contract will be extended to allow him to serve substantively
as IGP
for a while. We're also hearing about who may likely be his deputy, as in the deputy Inspector General of Police once a Council of State consultations are done. We
understand Christian Tetoyohonu is also likely to be his deputy in this particular case. And you do recall when Mr. Adam Bona put out that particular interesting perspective on the developments of the people. This current IGP, who may become the substantive, is actually deemed to have had the longest service in the service currently and the oldest, as we find it. But one particular part that was lacking in his performance was the fact that his he's not done a lot of the field work. So one person who may bridge that particular gap in the field work is Christian Tetoyonu, who Mr. Adams Bonaf said was the preferred candidate of most people in the service because of the extensive field work and his actions on the ground. This happened over a period of time that is believed to be his trump card.
Okay, so those are pieces of information our sources from government are telling us about the process. Sources from government, also from the Council of State. We understand that meeting likely tomorrow.
Yes, it's happening tomorrow.
Tomorrow to consider the president's, I guess, picks for substantive IGP and deputy. The sources say most likely the acting IGP, Mr. Bueno, will become the substantive once the process, barring any hitches, and Mr. Yono will become his deputy. This is a process that has been traveling for a while, since Asante Apetu left the scene. And so we watch this space closely. Once we get a confirmation of these, definitely we'll bring that to you. Raymond, thank you very much. Now to another big story that we're watching for you tonight, which has become a major topic of controversy for the last 1 week or so. Tonight it appears that the many public pronouncements of the education minister on the controversial comprehensive sexuality education has done little to resolve the controversy. Now, in the last few hours, the influential Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, at an emergency press conference, has demanded what they call a total withdrawal and annihilation of the comprehensive sexuality education. They also want government to hand back to the churches all faith-based education institutions. Now, pressure group Occupy Ghana, in a statement also today, cast doubts on the education minister's pronouncements that the CSE is not part of the approved curriculum because of the many contradictions that has so far emerged. Now, Occupy Ghana demands a full and frank disclosure on the matter. More on that shortly. But first, listen to the president of the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council addressing a press conference today, Reverend Professor Paul Manso.
Saying there should be total withdrawal, annihilation, destruction, expunge of that idea. It should be out of the vocabulary of Ghana education system. We do not want it. Whether our reps were there, all of us were culprits. The parliaments were there when some of the radio stations, you send your people to parliament to cover everything. You were there. The budget was read. You were there. Every one of us is part. So I'm not here to say who will cast the first stone. I am not here to cast a stone, throw a first stone on the minister or his representative. All of us are liable. But going forward, we are saying that never again. So what has already secretly been crept into our books, the paper you are reading, page 11, the primary one to say there, the statement is there. So we can't question it. Parliament, it was put on Parliament. Mr. Speaker, so Mr. Speaker had it. It was debated and discussed, and the thing was passed. I was even saying that I don't know whether it was true, that thing was, when we do parliamentary allocation, some go to interior, some go to defense, some go to finance, some go to health. Probably that portion was not even allocated for that cause through the Ministry of Education. All of us have got problem. It has. Thank God that we are at the moment resolving this situation.
Well, Maxwell Gbagba, you were at this particular press conference. Some very strong words there. Yeah. That wasn't all because they were absolutely emphatic. Yeah. They'll do anything in their power to resist this if that is even brought at a later date.
Yes, in fact, he had very strong words to describe the comprehensive sexuality education. He did not mince words, at all. He described it as demonic, vampire. He called it other names, and ultimately described it as comprehensive satanic education. But key amongst their positions on this subject matter is an outright rejection, and also some alliance of a sort with other groups to completely kick the CSE out of our system.
We reject absolutely the inclusion of comprehensive sexuality education in any form and in any name in our school curriculum now and in the future, as we see the policy as a long-term subtle agenda to target our young population with a liberal mindset to accepting and tolerating LGBTQ as a normal societal behavior in the very near future. We wish to reiterate that anything short of an assurance of complete withdrawal, I repeat, complete withdrawal of the policy and a promise never to introduce it in the very near future will not be accepted. We want a complete withdrawal and assurance from this government and subsequent government that never will such a phrase or an idea or ideology will even be mentioned in the educational system or our society. We shall not, as churches, parents, and community, shirk our primary moral upbringing responsibility of our children by allowing government and other external interest groups to dilute our long-tested traditional values on sexuality and allow the introduction of any CSE. We call on all Ghanaians, especially our mission schools, teacher unions, that is the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, the Concerned Teachers Association, and other like-minded stakeholders of our educational system to remain vigilant and expose any attempt to pass this obnoxious policy through the back door. We are working closely with other ecumenical and interfaith groups through the National Coalition for Proper Human Sexual Rights and Family Values, which GPCC is a member, to build up a strong national resistance to this policy and to ensure its total withdrawal. I repeat, total withdrawal. The lawyers will say expunge, delete, and completely taken away, never to be reintroduced in another form or shape or name in the future.
They had their own recommendations.
Yes, key amongst the recommendations is for Parliament to review aspects of the 2019 budget, which they say committed some resources to funding the CSE.
Government should be transparent with the people of Ghana by publicly committing to completely withdrawing this policy instead of a mere assurance of suspension of implementation. The Parliament, as a representative of the people, as a matter of urgency, should commence the relevant parliamentary process to review the aspects of the 2019 budget statement that committed state resources to funding this controversial CSE by ensuring that it is withdrawn and that no funds are expected on this policy. The GPCC is very resolute in its stance on the CSE and is standing firm with all other stakeholders on this matter, with the hope that government will further assure us beyond suspension of the policy to taking concrete steps for genuine dialogue with all stakeholders to safeguard the future of our children from a pervert generation of vampires scheming to destroy us.
Now, they did not only stay there. You know, we know that they have a lot of faith-based education institutions. I went to one at St. Thomas Aquinas, owned by the Catholic Church. they reiterate the point that because on the back of this conversation, they want government to hand the schools back to them.
Yeah, they think that the state lacks the capacity to instill, the kind of moral, upbringing that they want in the students in the various institutions. So he wants the states to hand over the schools to them so they can control the spirituality of a sort of the students.
Most of the churches in schools in Ghana, especially the good schools, the top-notch schools, were started by churches. They were governed by Christian morality and Christian leadership. Several years ago, they were taken over by government. And most of the challenges we are seeing is that the government hasn't got the strength or the willpower or the moral authority to handle this. For several years, we have pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed that they should give back the schools to the churches for us to train them. It is not happening. May I make the proposal that if government will not give us the school, then there should be partnership. They take the hardware and we take the software. They can build for us, they can pay the salaries, they can do the infrastructure, of course we will help. But the moral training and the upbringing of the children should be given to the churches to control and have authority so that we will bring out good, matured people in society. I've seen the breakdown of Inspectorate Division of Ministry of Education. When we were children, there were education officers, the CEOs and the rest, DEO, District Education, they will come and make sure that things were done the right way. Supervision and monitoring have broken down.
And you had at the top of that clips that we played from this press conference, the suggestion that there may have been some budgetary allocation, some money's already spent on the development of the CSC guidelines. We've been digging into this to try and find any evidence to back this. In fact, there is quite some evidence out there, both from UNESCO and from government itself, about how much money had been pumped into this. If you check the Government of Ghana website in February this year, when government together with UNESCO launched this, the CSE, I guess, policy and its plan to get into, make it part of our curriculum, they state that it's going to be funded by the Swedish government and Ireland as well. Now, what did we find? We also found from the UNESCO's own website that on 3rd November 2017, at UNESCO headquarters in Paris, they held an event to commemorate the partnership to support positive health, gender, and education outcomes for adolescents and young people in sub-Saharan Africa. This was a partnership between UNESCO and Sweden. Now, the Swedish government, from that particular resource on UNESCO's website, had allocated a total of approximately $30 million over an 8-year period to promote the CSE agenda in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, out of the countries that had been shortlisted and selected for funding included Ghana, but also included Benin, Senegal, Togo, Angola, Botswana, South Africa. So Ghana was there. So Ghana was to benefit from the $30 million that the Swedish government had allocated, and spending had begun way before 2017 to get the CSE agenda into the curriculum of many of the African countries, including Ghana. Maxwell, what was the stated objective for this funding?
Well, it was to support and accelerate efforts and commitment to ensure that comprehensive sexuality education empowers adolescents and young people while developing the skills, knowledge, attitudes, and competences needed to sustain positive education, health, and gender equality outcomes. Also, to fully stand behind young people's rights, lives, and future.
UNESCO themselves stated the objectives.
Exactly. Well, through our rights, our lives, our future.
Which was what was, in fact, launched by the government in UNESCO this year in February.
Exactly. UNESCO and Sweden was going to support member states to provide adolescents and young people with CSE that promotes gender equality and human rights and addresses gender norms and stereotypes. They said that the growing body of evidence confirms that well implemented sexuality education programs results in young people delaying age of first sex, reduced frequency of sex, reduced number of sex partners, and increased rates of condom use.
So that is UNESCO's own stated objectives for the funding, and as we just indicated, the Swedish government indeed had allocated $30 million to fund a number of African countries to put this in their agenda locally. Now, I want to quickly walk you through the timelines. So the key question, what are the timelines as far as the controversial comprehensive sexuality education agenda for Ghana is concerned? Now, this is what we know. Now, in 2017, this date is by no means a start for rolling out the CSE agenda across the globe. But it is an important date as far as the funding for what has become locally controversial is concerned. Yesterday, if you listen to Topstory, the Education Ministry claimed that as far back as 2014 or so, the GES had signed onto a guideline for implementing the CES. And so, Maxwell, let's start with the timeline. Let's start November 2017. What happened in that period?
We know that the disclosure was made that the Swedish government had allocated approximately $30 million to Ghana and other African countries to implement CXE. This was at an event at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris.
Then another date. This is 2018. During that period, and this is the early part of 2018, Ghana started working on developing guidelines on comprehensive sexuality education. This is at a period early 2018. Ghana indeed started working on developing the guidelines on CSE for incorporation into the national education curriculum. Now, the National Population Council was a lead state agency on this, benefiting from the Swedish funding, of course. Now, we also know, reading from a piece published on the Government of Ghana website, that Ireland also supported the development of these guidelines. Now, for Ireland, we don't know how much exactly they contributed to the funding. Maxwell.
Exactly. So
that date is important. This is later 2018 November.
November, exactly. So the finance minister goes to parliament and as part of the 2019 budget reports that, quote, the National Population Council, NPC, in collaboration with other stakeholders, developed guidelines on comprehensive sexual education, CSE, for incorporation into the national education curriculum. The council reviewed policies that impose structural barriers to condom use in Ghana as parts of efforts to effectively implement the national condom strategy that is between the period 2016 to 2020 in line with SDG 3, unquote.
So that's November 2018. Now
Exactly.
Let's come to February 2019. According to the Government of Ghana website, and as we have heard confirmed in the videos and audios, there was a major event in which the Education Minister, supported by the Health Minister, joined UNESCO to, quote, launch a program to empower adolescents and young people, and this is on the Government of Ghana website, to empower adolescents and young people to deepen their scope of existing activities to attain a comprehensive sexuality education. Now, as the Education Minister himself confirms at that event, the plan was to include the CSE in the school curriculum this September. So let's come to September 2019.
September 2019, the CSE, although mentioned in the teacher resource packs as part of the broad curriculum framework, has not been included in the curriculum. It has not been rolled out as originally planned. The Education Minister has explained that that has already been developed, has not been approved. But one question remains.
And this is an important one. What's
exactly.
that question?
Is there a plan to implement it in some form or in the future?
Now, the Education Minister answered that, and this is a very key question. And if you hear the Charismatic Pentecostal Charismatic Council today, they were emphatic that expunge it,
exactly.
take it out
completely.
Because the suggestion is that at a later date they might want to bring it back.
Exactly.
Now, so the question is a simple one. Is there a plan to implement it in some form in the future? The Education Minister answered that question on Peace FM yesterday. He says Ghana will get to the point of implementation, but it will be done in accordance with our values and culture.
Exactly.
But as you've heard the Pentecostal Council say, they don't want it in uniform whatsoever. Maxwell, thank you very much. Today, the Occupy Ghana also waded into this with a statement. In fact, they questioned, they cast a lot of doubt on the information, the education minister's claim that this was not part of the agenda for curriculum, and they want full disclosure on this. I want to bring in now Alex Anda Yaudanso. He's the president of the National Council of Parent Teacher Association. Mr. Danso, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you, my brother.
What's the National Council of PTA's position on this controversy as it's raged till now?
Thank you very much. Good evening to your listeners. I think we've made our point clear last Tuesday also. And so we are, of course, we were not consulted. We were not even invited. We didn't participate in the deliberations and all that. Or what we saw that it has come out, and I, for one, got the guidelines to the CSC, which was signed by Professor Puku Amankwa, and depending where the source was an authentic source. So I'm even surprised that he says it's not genuine, it's a draft and all that. But if my ears serves me right, when Mr. Foucault, the Director General, was speaking at Peace FM, that was a Tuesday or so, he owned it, that he has his signature, his name and signature there. He even quoted his mother, who is 50, who has been a Roman Catholic for 50 years, and the father who brought Methodist Church to Avisa and all that. But having said that, you see, communication is very important. If all these things, if parents or the Ghanaian public had been educated or have been invited to make their submissions and all that, all these people wouldn't have been coming. In any case, a child in Ghana, he knows that he or she is a male or a female. And as to the body parts, nobody teaches them. Even the mother, the father, they are let's not forget that the first teacher of every child is the parent. And so we have been with that's been in our curriculum, stay away from sex, do this. Report,
so that is a sex education part of it, which have been taught in schools. Now, let me ask you: the Pentecostal and Charismatic Council today made it very clear they want a total withdrawal of the policy and expunged from any conversation as far as education is concerned. What does your council want?
That's exactly what we want. Because if countries who are practicing it are now rejecting it, South Africa, they demonstrated. One of the parties, had a demonstration against the CES. You see, the wedding, I don't know. So what we are advocating for is that we don't want it to be taught in the schools.
I'm grateful that you joined us. That is Alexander Yaudan, so he's the president of the National Council of PTA. Newsnight starts in 1 minute. Stay with us.